Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our virtual home for Poets at the Library. This is an event being hosted by Princeton Public Library. I'm Janie Herman, the Public Programming Librarian. We have been hosting poetry at the library under many guises on a monthly basis or quarterly basis at least for over 15 years now. We have worked with US 1 poets and the Delaware Valley poets to have Poets at the Library be a regular part of our public programming at the library. Since the pandemic began, we have been unable to host our poetry readings, but now we're back and we're going to be here for a little while doing poetry on Crowdcast. In fact, we have readers lined up already for our next Poets at the Library event, where Wanda Praisner and Lois Marie Harold will be reading on December 14th. I'll be getting that listing up very shortly. But in addition, we have a special poetry event with some of our local poets that'll be happening here on October 28th. It's with Maxine Sussman and Judith Dowd. This was originally to be part of our Women's History Month programming in March. When we closed down in March for the pandemic, we just didn't have time to pivot and get this program put online. And so we're so happy that we'll be able to do this with these two wonderful poets. And I'm going to put the link right here in the chat. If you're not already signed up for it, you might want to consider that. And once you're now here on Crowdcast, of course, you'll be able to follow along with all the other great events that we do here at the library. We've been hosting authors on here, we've had virtual demos, and we're just so happy now that we can add poetry back to the mix, because poetry is so important in these times. It is these kinds of words that can get us through these times of isolation and hardship and give us a way to connect again to what is essential. So tonight we have two featured readers, and I'll be bringing them on screen in a moment. And first I'm going to be bringing up Paul Sohár, but I'm going to read both of the introductions now, and then I'll be bringing up the co-reader, who is Lew Maltby. We only have one person signed up for the open mic, and I think that's because there was a problem with the registration form. So if you would like to grab a poem, if you have it, at the very end, we will have time for open mic, and I will allow one or two other readers to get invited on screen if you'd like to read a poem. The other thing is if you want to ask a question to the poets, they will stay at the end to do a Q&A. And so there's an ask a question button at the bottom of the screen. You can just pop your question in there if something moves you to do so. And I think without that, I think that's all of the, Samuel Smith, it's original poetry. That's what the open mic is for, if you have original poetry to share. That was a question that just popped up. Okay, so let me introduce our two featured readers for the evening. Paul Sohár washed up as a Hungarian student refugee on these shores, where he got a degree in philosophy and a day job in a pharmaceutical lab. But he has a real passion for writing, and he has been writing and publishing in every genre, including 17 volumes of translations, the latest being The Refugee from Iniquity Press in 2019. His prose works include True Tales of a Fictitious Spy and a collection of one-act plays from One Act Depot in Saskatoon, Canada, that was published in 2014. In the theater world, he wrote the lyrics for GD is Something Gorgeous by Applause Theater in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and he's been published in hundreds of magazines such as Agni, Big Hammer, Gargoyle, and Rattle, as well as others. The latest of his own poetry is a chapbook, In Sun's Shadow, and it was published by Ragged Sky Press in 2020. And it's from this volume that he will be reading for you tonight. You can buy Paul Sohár's book, In Sun's Shadow, directly from Ragged Sky Press, but also on Amazon. And I did put the link to his book in the chat earlier, but I'm going to do that now, just so we can all do that. And please, support Ragged Sky Press. They are actually local. Whoopsie, that didn't quite go through because the H was on. Let me do that again. There is the link to Ragged Sky Press and to Paul's book. And they are a local publisher, so please support them. Lew Maltby is going to be the second reader, and he has an unusual background for a poet. He has been a factory worker, a trial lawyer, a soldier, a college professor, and a truck driver. He finds his poetry in unlikely places. Tracer bullets over his head as a soldier, the demonic lullaby of hyenas in the African night, prostitutes staggering home at 5 a.m., balanced on the jagged edge of morning, in criminal courtrooms, floors slippery with invisible blood. An incurable romantic, he writes of past lovers, bodies colliding like snowflakes under the northern lights. His first chapbook, Smiling Axes, is available from Kelsey Press and on Amazon. And like I did with Paul, I'm going to just drop that link in there in case you would like to support the publisher and support Lew. It's there in the chat now. So that is about all I have to say for introductions, which means we are now ready to get going with the main event. So I am going to bring up Paul onto the screen. Oopsie. Paul, are you there? He was there a moment ago.
Yep. I haven't moved. Maybe I turned on another light.
Yeah, Paul, you need to put your camera back on.
Oh.
There we go. Great, we did it. Okay, Paul. And so here's Paul. He's in his natural habitat. He is out here. He's going to read for us now. So Paul, take it away.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful. I got this invitation last winter, I think, and was really looking forward to it. It's one of the best venues for poetry, the Princeton Public Library, and I feel really honored to be here, even if it's just virtually. But I have a kind of a calling card poem which I use to introduce myself as a poet, and it kind of summarizes my feelings about poetry and my approach. And maybe there are some people in the audience who have heard it before, and I hope they don't mind hearing it again. It's called A 2-Minute Salvation. Although life exhales but one poetic line, the marketplace is crowded, and the stands are sagging with words. Syllables go tumbling over unrhymed syllables, verse climbing over verse, and you get but 2 thin minutes or less to unpack and sell your wares. 2 minutes to diagnose and cure the ills of the universe, plus dissect your soul and hang it out for everyone to see the bloody mess. 2 minutes to lie on the altar where your heart is torn out and tossed into the shredding machine for the lack of sacrificial fire on the cool foreheads fencing you in. 2 minutes to shove your metaphor into the mouth, gaping at you, and reach all the way down into the stomach to turn it inside out. 2 minutes to strip off the clown costume and play a naked violin standing on the ceiling. 2 minutes to get your SOS across an ocean of suffocating cliches. 2 minutes to douse yourself with rhymes and look for matches. 2 minutes to give away eternity wrapped inside a hyperbole. 2 minutes to steal a pearl into the eyes before you. 2 minutes on the judge's bench, 2 minutes on the dock, 2 minutes on the butcher block, 2 minutes on the rack, 2 minutes on the soapbox, 2 minutes on the cross. But 2 minutes can also be the age of the universe if you have a well-honed secret tucked away in a pocket of your verse, and if your frantic meter doesn't cause it to sink before you reach a sunny shore of applause, hanging on to the 2 minutes refrain. Just 2 more minutes, please. And then you can shoo me off into nevermore. Well, 2 minutes is what the you get on an open mic, and this is what this is where I make my most appearances at open mic sessions, and so that's what it was all about. And after this, let me talk about my book. I should have sent a copy to the library, and I forgot about that. That's too bad. I'll have to make up for that mistake. And let me talk about this book. Just say one thing: this is a summary of life's work, and it's I just picked poems that had already been published somewhere, and in this way, each poem has some kind of a stamp of approval, from an editor. And so that gave me some assurance that I was in the right track. But how to put a book like this together? Mostly the poems are arranged in chronological order, but I couldn't find exactly. That didn't make sense because they were just jumping from one thing to another. So I arranged the book in more thematically around 7 different themes. And I'm going to go over each one and read one poem from each of these themes. The first is sort of biographical, and it especially concentrates on 2 events in my life that were kind of, life determining events. One was the war, and then the second was 10 years later in the 50s, the revolution in Hungary, which gave me a chance to escape. And so both events were very traumatic. And let me just read one about the war. It's called The War Bread. By the end of the war, we would eat bread left over by the crows, bread brought back from the war in caskets or black envelopes, bread growing on empty shelves, in piles of dead maggots. By the end of the war, we'd devour bread made of barren soil, bread whose soil was mocked by clay, bread kneaded by bare feet on the muddy road to death, bread Ivan Denisovich saved under his shirt, even if he didn't have a shirt, bread dumped by the fat backsides of bread merchants and prison guards. And after the war, we'll make up bread out of naked skulls and eat the crumbs the dead will drop from the busy jaws. We'll rip open one another's bellies for the bread. After this war, there will be another war, eating the soil without baking it into bread, and the soil will be lapping up the toxic crumbs scattered by loaves of war bread clouds from an oven we used to call the sky. Well, that's kind of reflects the horrors of the war. And actually, the situation we are in, this pandemic, somewhat reminds me of the war situation, which caused isolation and sort of things coming to a standstill. And at least we are facing danger. I'm told that I am kind of predisposed to it, but so far I'm okay. But during the war, the danger was every day with bombs falling on your head. Okay, moving on to the second section is more about my life later and about poetry. And I selected this one as an example. My poetry tends to be the surrealist side and even Dadaist sometimes. You will hear in a minute. This one is called Brief Belief. The ocean may splatter its brains on the shore regularly, but the sun makes a believer of me every evening when it briefly walks on water. On the red carpet rolled out between just the two of us, between me and its divine chariot, for a brief, luminous spell, while I feel I too could walk on water and run to this God, begging it to take me along on its warm and heavy shoulders, rather than leaving me behind for another night darkened by demented ghosts squabbling over my dead footprints in the sand. Dead dreams about walking like the sun on a calm, pewter platter sea and listening to the waves with golden but silent nods. And this was published in England somewhere. Now let me move into the section that is all about arts in every form, including music and paintings and poetry. And my favorite in this section is though about an opera. It's a performance I happened to catch by accident. I noticed that the Met had an empty hole, unscheduled night, and I wondered what the hell it was, and kept an eye on it. And when a schedule came up, I bought a ticket immediately. It turned out to be La Boheme with Montserrat Caballé and Luciano Pavarotti. And it was such a fabulous evening that I just never forget. I don't know why it was. I had heard Pavarotti before and after, and I heard Caballé, but somehow the two of them just created magic then that night. And this one is somehow associated in my mind with this stupid saying, "It's not over until the fat lady sings." And I couldn't track down that saying, who started it, but here it goes. The fat lady sings, but it's not over even after the fat lady sings. If the fat lady is Montserrat Caballé and she sings Mi chiamano Mimi, and the fat tenor is Luciano Pavarotti, who sings Che gelida manina, like they did back in 1976, one evening at the Met, when the chandeliers turned into a snowfall of goosebumps, and the seats turned into mellifluous blooms of cheers. Every note soared as a star into the extra dark bohemian night, and the curtain burned up in shame for trying to put an end to a story that was never to end, but to go on, carrying the whole house past the slender storyline of romance to a special stage where it's not over when the fat lady sings, because when she sings, she pours out the endless strands of a melody, and she weaves them into a love story between Mimi and Rodolfo, and more, a love story between the fat lady and Mimi, between the fat singers and the arias glowing on their faces, between the drama and the music, between the tune-drunk audience and the nectar of opera, between the traffic noise of life outside and the music within. Because when the fat lady sings, everyone who listens turns into a miniature live opera house where the fat lady never stops singing and the fat tenor never stops answering her call, and the two of them never stop becoming younger and more beautiful bohemians every day. So that was Puccini's La Bohème. It is unforgettable performance. And I'd like to read, just for the sake of completeness, a acrostic sort of poem that is inspired by Francis Bacon's paintings. I don't know if you are familiar with Francis Bacon. Is like the #1 British artist of the 1950s and 60s. And he had a period when he painted nothing but black background and a red cage, and inside the cage a sort of a mangled face, and that was his approach to art, and it somehow was looked very dramatic, and I couldn't help but putting it into a poem. What do they say, the chunks of flesh of the darkness, to the darkness, hugging them? Black is alive with hidden colors, while light lacks the depth of black. Close the windows, turn out the light, undress the night, and bathe your bareness in it. Light is only alive when it is punched, when it punches you out, and you lie flat on your face, staring into a deep, dark crack, and your flesh starts to howl at the bloody cage of light for the comforting hand of a big black night. So that's Francis Bacon. And I had a section devoted to, well, one should not ignore social issues. And I had a bunch of poems on this, but then it turned out I'd like to read a poem from the next section, which is which consists of poems written in a traditional form, and it has a poem in it, the Armageddon Again. And I wrote a poem about Armageddon. It was published in Canada somewhere. It was in 1960s or early 70s during the Vietnam War. And then this was written more recently, and it's called the Armageddon Again. And it actually repeats some of the lines of the first one. If we have time, I'll go back to the original one too. But this is the more recent Armageddon. Bury me with the rest when it is over. Don't try to look for me in the debris. Names will mean so little to a bulldozer. It will not stop and start looking for me. Bury me under the tread marks of winners. those still left standing and rushing to claim victory's well-deserved ashes as golden ornaments to their own blood-polished fame. Bury me with the books and the old pictures of the museums, still burning to know who was it started this unholy mess, whose blood is searing the nuclear snow. Bury the weapons of daily destruction, with my corpse guarding their innocent rust. Let the tanks cover me, for I'll be a bomb, blowing up all that's left with my disgust. Bury me quietly when it is over. I don't want prayers or songs flown above by anyone else but your bloody bulldozer tramping on my mass grave before you sign off. Well, after this rather dark and dreary poem, I have something more cheerful. It's more or less it's a Dadaist kind of a poem, and more of a wordplay in it. It's called The Show, Sex in the Ice Age. Mastodons and mandolins in the hands of hairy hills. Mastodons and a single time-encrusted mandolin dressed in a dust of loneliness, which will make her phosphoresce in the UV light of the moon. Why did we leave our footprints behind? Why be so mean, so picayune, when we could be riding on the hairy back of a mastodon, perched on erectly curling tusks, with our songs dancing on the strings of an undulating mandolin? Yes, we could be scrubbing skin on skin, mastodon and mandolin, pricked by the burning snow in the song-shaped shallow hills, the silence of the Ice Age singing in the cunning old ravine before it seals its spotlight from a mastodon's cold mandolin. And, I think I'm running close to the 20 minutes allotted to me, and I'm going to move on to the last section, which was unplanned, but this is a bunch of poems quite recent and all devoted to my daughter, who passed away in a medical accident in a doctor's office. It was a very sudden thing, and it was something I could only deal with by writing down my memories and my reactions to the memories, and the lack of and the absence of the loved one. And I have so many, it's hard to choose one, but let me pick this one here. It says, funny how I used to bug you about your weight, and you turned yourself weightless. What's the molecular weight of the soul? The speed of a prayer. Funny how I begged you to tell me what was behind your choreographed smile, and you left stacks of diaries behind that I'm afraid to open. Funny how you didn't trust just one message on the phone to get to me, and how many did you have to leave? How many bees in a basket of a summer day? Funny how many cell phone rings, even if I just happen to look at it, or else it's ringing in my sinuses and I have to accept my cell phone is dead. Funny how I can't conjure up your face because I don't want to see the purple and the tubes. What is the molecular weight of the soul? The ringtone of a prayer. And, well, this is how it ends. And for a picture, I chose a picture where it's both of us here. And I'll send a copy of the book to the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Paul. That last poem was so touching, and we will be honored to receive a copy of your book. Thank you so much. And I've got Lew up here on screen. He's going to read next. Your reading was beautiful. I loved the diversity, and people in the chat can leave us comments if they like. I think you can probably see the chat happening to our right. So, Paul, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle you. You'll still be on here with us, but you're going to just be kind of disappeared like Lew was while you were reading. So I'm going to toggle your video and microphone off for now, and I'll bring you back up later on. And people are saying thank you, that was very moving, that it was touching, and that everybody loved the diversity of what you read to us. So, Paul, I'm going to toggle you off, and we're going to let Lew take it away. Okay, so I gave Lew's introduction earlier, so he is now a man that needs no introduction. So, Lew, take it away. We're looking forward to your reading. I'm going to make the focus go on you.
Did you ever ask yourself, what is poetry? If you would ask A. Houseman, he'd say it was rhymed verse. If you ask Whitman, he'd say, doesn't have to rhyme. If you ask E. E. Cummings, he'd say, doesn't even have to be verse. And there are some people who even say that poetry isn't about words at all. Bruce Springsteen says that in Jungle Land, the poets here don't write nothing at all. They just stand back and let it all be. I think Springsteen's onto something. To me, poetry is about finding those transcendent moments that are so rare and sometimes occur in the most unlikely places, such as Echo Company, Fort Campbell, Tennessee. They took everything, even my hair, and welcomed me into the death machine, lying beside strangers, brothers overnight, sleeping like a lover with an M16. Just another piece of meat wrapped in green, stuffed in a trash bag if luck runs out. My father thinks his son's a hero. I do not correct him. Do not say that I am only gazing at a meteor shower of tracers through barbed wire. That was a real moment. I was one night in boot camp crawling with my face in the mud because they were shooting machine guns over our heads to keep us honest. I went under some barbed wire. Hundreds of phosphorus-coated machine gun tracer bullets in the sky so close I could almost touch them. And it was so damn beautiful. I got lost. I dropped my M16, my helmet fell off, and I don't know how long I was lying there, so somebody kicked me and told me to get the hell out of the way. Now, sometimes you find those moments in the usual places, like love. Akuriri, 81 degrees north. The wind whispered on the roof. The morning we rode the day like a stallion and folded the night sky into bed sheets for our love. Bodies colliding like snowflakes under the northern lights. That's also a real moment, but a different kind of real moment. It didn't actually occur. The woman I was in love with and I broke up before we ever got to Iceland, so it exists only in my imagination and now my memory, but somehow that doesn't always seem to be so bad. But an emotion that can bring you that kind of ecstasy can take you equally far in the other direction. no man's land. Huddled in trenches, worried creases on the land's dark brow, waiting the order to advance, bayonets erect, and engage in carnal combat in no man's land, where bodies hang like Christmas ornaments on barbed wire, blood and semen mixing warily. Now, sometimes you have to go to the ends of the earth to find these transcendent moments, such as Jema El Fna, Marrakesh. They call it place of the apocalypse. Tumble into any rabbit hole, dog shit, broken glass, dodge the pinball motorbike boys, follow the sweet stew of jasmine and ways and wolf howls to a towerless Babel where saffron sun assaults and sleepy camels wander. Hawk-eyed men with cobras drift you eyeless toward the point of no return. And sometimes the moments are right in your backyard. Weekend warriors. Valkyries in ponytails streak across the green. Ball-seeking missiles of boisterous mayhem. After bloodlust morphs to bonhomie in a sea of warm beer, warriors retreat to the library to battle with Proust on a wine-sap afternoon high above the Hudson. One of those warriors was my daughter, Julia, who was a legendary hard-ass, even among rugby players. I have another daughter, Ellie, who's kind of different. I call her Sunshine. Leatherneck nurses, once bright eyes stolen by too much seeing, hard as the potholed streets of Trenton, called her the Angel. She emerged from the section's maw, bloody as a boxer in the 15th round, smiling at the doctor as he struck the world's first blow. I also have a third son, Aaron, and if you know your Bible well enough after you hear this poem, I think you'll know him too. Absalom. Child of fire, reckless comet, deaf to the fearful murmurings of earth dwellers, blind to your frightening trajectory, tap dancer in a minefield, beaming at passing shrapnel, golden pinball in the asteroid machine. We hold our breath, praying you don't tilt. The last monumental figure in my life was my dad. Depression-era kid, born in some shithole town you never heard of, struck down with polio at 11, who just clawed his way to the top of the totem pole. Although the price he and I paid was very high. The king is dead. His portrait hung in the lobby, eyes following you in every direction. He preferred the cartoon on a grocery bag from a cheap bar in Nogales. It hung over his desk, framed by a bullwhip. The night he brought them home, we popped leaves off the backyard oak trees until the neighbors called the cops. The whip is silent now. Portrait's eyes no longer move. The cartoon hangs on the blistered wall of a grandson's Roxbury walk-up. The one who taught me to fear nothing but himself now cowers before the looming. Freud once said that all that matters in life is love and work. Well, you've now heard a little bit about love of more than one type. So a little bit about work. My first job as a lawyer was as a public defender in Philadelphia, which leads to Mr. PD. In the halls of justice, the justice is in the halls. Knight errant in a cheap suit, butt sniffing the black-robed gargoyle perched upon the bench. Bad actor, pretending to believe the blue perjury parade. Defendants plead not guilty, as if it mattered, not in on the joke. I serve him up an easy one. 18-year-old kid caught hot wiring a car, first offense. He slams it into the upper deck. A year in Holmesburg. What? Then you get the memo? Suddenly a conjurer. I come up with missing files and unavailable witnesses with dazzling ease. The tide of perjury turning until the clock runs out. Just another punch card day at the Justice Factory. Floor is slippery with invisible blood. Before that, I don't know if you can call being an anti-war protester a job, but it was the thing I was most involved in, so I guess it was, which leads to boomers. Golden children, greatest generation's pride and joy, gnawing out of suburban cocoons to discover sex and evil for the 1000th first time, rushing home with our discovery, at least the latter, to our parents like a straight-A report card, refusing to play Uncle Lyndon's game of dominoes, throwing flowers at the monster, tilting at tanks with paper lances, careless puppies playing in the gun barrel of history, until 4 shrouded messengers from Ohio came and revealed our parents' true first love. The shortest gig I ever had was as a logger. It lasted about 3 days, which maybe is the reason they gave me the shortest poem I think I've ever written. It's called Woodcutters. Chainsaws cough and snarl and spit up frozen bark. Chestnut-faced men with cinder voices gripped their sledges with angry knuckles and flashed their smiling axes in the sun, joyful in their honest slaughter. Jeannie, how am I doing on time? Okay. In that case, let me do 2 short ones more. One is about one of these transcendent moments that's both under your nose and halfway around the world. It's called Dahomey Blues. A Shafalaya night, red moon swimming in chocolate bayou. Saxophone sings a runaway train, switchblade rhythm carving Cajun darkness like a black snake through summer grass. Echoes of djembe and conch shells sweaty wrestling under jagged Dahomey skies. Shark dark eyes kneel on bloody earth, waiting the benediction of the leopard's claw. And the first poem I ever wrote, which I never expected to see the light of day, I sent to the easiest competition I could find, which was the North Dakota Annual Poetry Society contest. And amazing enough, I won. I was the poet laureate of North Dakota for a year. Hunting at Dawn. Sparrows explode like buckshot as we stride across the frown's brown face, free as foxes, mudlucky in the clumsy dawn. Hiding deep in cool as salamander thickets, we watch crows wheel and fall like shaggy thunder from the skies, catch the melting morning in cupped hands.
Okay, thank you so much, Lew. Now, Lew, was this your first public reading of this book? Because it just came out recently. Is that not correct? Oh, I don't think Lew can hear me. Why can Lew not hear me? Lew, can you hear me now? Oh, okay. I'm going to type it in. I'll just say thanks, Lew. Okay. Lew's having trouble hearing for some reason, but we could hear him, so that was the important part. And I'm going to put Lew off screen for now, and he'll be disappearing. Okay. I'm going to just type something to Lew here so he knows. Okay. So this is the portion of the evening where we're going to have open mic. And we have one person, Catherine Widener, who volunteered to come on for open mic. If you're also willing to come on, you can pop your name in there and we'll see who else we can get on here. So hang on a second now. I got to go to my people, live attendees. And what I do if you want to do open mic is I invite you on screen. And so right now I'm doing that. I'm giving Catherine an invitation on screen, and she should show up here momentarily. Yes, Lew and Paul were both brilliant. I agree with you, Ellen. And I like the way that Lew strung his presentation together as well. Such diversity and such emotion and packing. And yay, as we are filling in time, here's Catherine. So she is brave enough to be our very first open mic reader in the virtual world. And hopefully she'll set the example so that when we come back in the future for future readings, we'll have a full slate of open mic. But again, do not be afraid to jump online and read a poem. Oh, Sam Smith, he said he would like to. So Sam, the time limit's about 3 minutes, like usually one longer poem or two short poems. So after Catherine finishes, we will let you go on. So Catherine, I'm gonna let you take it away.
I will go with one short poem. And this is for others who have spent the last 3 seasons perfecting their lawns and gardens. It's called Undergrowth. You, who scratched my ground, tore at my roots, left me to wilt in the searing sun, then covered me with soil, planted seeds on that ground, and watered them gently, should have known I would grow to strangle those roots, rise from this earth, fight for space and light, smother their growth, yet you call me a weed.
Okay. Oops, I love it. That was brilliant. Nice, short, and to the point. Just what we need for an open mic. So again, I want to thank Catherine for being our very first person. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Catherine leave, and I am going to invite up Sam Smith. And I still have Paul and Lew on here, although Lew's having trouble hearing me. And the funny thing is, even when you do all of these tests and everything else, things can go wrong. Samuel Smith, there you are. Okay, so Sam, you'll be getting your invitation to join us on screen. And while we're waiting, just a reminder that you can buy Paul's book from Ragged Sky Press, and you can buy, I'm having a moment here. You can buy Lew's book also online, and it was from Kelsey Books. Okay, and here we have Sam Smith joining us online. So take it away with your poem.
Hi, so this is a syllabic poem I wrote called Looking for Georgia. Amongst the countless paint splatters, only stillness was in the painting. I am of many identities, painted over an eternity. I paint when I am in suffering. I paint when my life is flourishing. Beauty in the stillness, like water, love of chaos, a revolution. Paint a woman, you desire her. Give her a mirror, she's vanity. Feminine, masculine divided, trapped a binary hegemony. Do women have to be naked to get into the Metro Museum? Women seen as objects, men seen as scientists, nobles, human beings. I know artists of nobility, but know too the common artistry, the beauty in the ordinary. Van Gogh's best art was in St. Remy, spent 1 year in St. Paul Asylum, Do not be afraid to help yourself. Paint the little things, her eyes, flowers, starry nights, paint the revolution.
Wow. Thank you for coming on to share that. That's beautiful.
Thank you. I've never done an open mic before, so.
Oh, you never did an open mic before?
No, ma'am.
And did you, is this poem published somewhere? Or are you still?
No, I'm working on being published. I didn't know being published was a thing. I took a poetry class and a creative writing class this semester. I'm in college at Towson University. And my professor was like, hey, you should publish. So I'm working on that right now.
Well, congratulations. And thank you for being brave enough to come online and be a part of our open mic. We're thrilled that you were here with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And so, hang on, see if I can get Lew and Paul back one final time. Okay, so we have Lew and Paul back on, and I don't think Lew can hear me still for some reason. But anyhow, let's just give a big thank you to our brave readers tonight who came out to do open mic, but also big thanks to Lew and Sam and Paul. And we're getting feedback from. There we go. So thank you to Paul and Lew, and thank you to Catherine and Sam. And again, we're looking forward to seeing you back here at the end of the month for the special event that was supposed to be back in March for Women's History Month. And then we'll see you again in December for our next Poets at the Library. Thank you, everybody, and good night.